webinar. This is webinar number 8. As you may or may not know, my name is Tia Tyler and I'm a project manager at the Local Government Commission. We are one of the NGO partners who help with the SEEC program. It's called the Statewide Energy Efficiency Collaborative. And for today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on building decarbonization policies for California local governments. And you can see it's in partnership with BAAQMD, Building Decarbonization Coalition, and the Bay Area Regional Collaborative. So some brief housekeeping. Oops, of course, we want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to make the SEEC forum happen or be able to transition it to a virtual format. We also want to give a huge shout out to our promotional partners. They really help us get the word out to spread the resources throughout California, because it's really important for us to try our best to help all local government meet their energy and renewable goals. Oops. We also want to give a shout out for upcoming webinars. We do have one coming up next week. Below you can see the different titles in which they're focusing on. We also have an amazing networking activity taking place. It's Pictionary. It's great. We really encourage people to go. Depending on the amount of people participating in Pictionary, we're going to have it divided into teams, and the winning teams will receive a $50 gift card to their local business of choice. So we really encourage you all to sign up. You can see in the corner, this is the link to our website, and that is where you can sign up for future webinars and also our networking activities. We also created what we call the SEEC peer-to-peer network on LinkedIn. Just having the event be virtual versus in person, we know it's really hard to connect with other individuals who do this work. So we're trying our best to create other outlets in which people can go and connect with one another on a professional level and also personal. And so if you all would like to participate in this group and you have a LinkedIn account, you can go ahead and join and you'll be admitted probably within a day. And if you're interested in participating, you can find the link right here below. We will also be sending a link to participation in the chat. Brief intro on Zoom. At this point, I feel like many people know this, but again, if you have any questions, we ask you to submit them in the Q&A function. That makes it easier for us to track the questions to ensure they get answered. Also, if you want to chat with anyone or if you have any questions for LGC staff, feel free to use the chat box. So introducing today's panelists, I'm just going to give a brief overview so they can get started with their presentation. We have Abby Young from the Climate Protection, who's a Climate Protection Manager, Amy Ryder, who is a consultant, and Neil DeCino, who is a principal. And I'm going to let Neil take it away.
Great, thank you, Tia. I'm going to share my screen now. I have a few more slides, and then we'll get into the details of the show. And almost there. So actually, I'm going to immediately turn it over to Amy Ryder, or Abby Young, who is the with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, to introduce the program, and then we'll hear from Amy Ryder, and we'll walk through the new tool. Abby?
Abby, you're on mute.
Thanks. I have used Zoom before. So thank you, Neil. I am Abby Young. I'm the Climate Protection Manager at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And I think there are a few other air districts attending this event. So that's fantastic. I think this is a great role for air districts to play, trying to help local governments decarbonize their buildings. I just wanted to mention, I've been at the Air District for about 12 years, and prior to that, I spent about 11 years at ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. So have been working for quite a long time with local governments trying to develop and implement greenhouse gas mitigation strategies. And here at the Air District, it's been a few years now that we've been looking at the building sector. This is something that we started exploring about 5 years ago as we were developing our regional clean air plan. We brought together a few focus groups of subject matter experts in the building field to talk about, how could we really significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the building sector, and what might an appropriate role for the air district be. And what we came to realize was that existing buildings were really the biggest challenge for local governments. So we thought if there were a role that we could play in facilitating the transition from fossil fuel use in buildings to all electric, clean electric buildings, that would be a great role for an air district. So about a year ago, we joined the Building Decarbonization Coalition. And through that partnership with Amy and bringing on Neil, we developed this tool, the Clean Building Compass, which is a web-based policy clearinghouse curated specifically for local government staff. So the objective is to provide a centralized and comprehensive set of resources to help cities and counties decarbonize their new and existing building stock to accelerate this transition. And I think we can go to the next slide, Neil. Slide 2, I think. Yes, there we go. So I wanted to introduce Amy and Neil, who will be walking us through the clearinghouse this morning. Amy is the primary architect of the Compass, and she is a consultant that works very closely as part of the Building Decarbonization Coalition. And she's got an extensive background in both energy policy consulting, but also in local government, which I think makes her a very good person to be thinking through how this website can present this information. She has been an energy coordinator for both the town of Windsor and for Sonoma County, and also for the community choice energy entity, Sonoma Clean Power. So she's got a nice breadth of experience. And then Neil DeSnow is the principal for Clean Energy Policy Advisors. But before that, and I'm just going to guess, spent, 30 years maybe as the energy officer for the city of Berkeley. So when it comes to knowing how local governments can implement building energy policies and programs, there's really no one who knows this better than Neil. And he, as I mentioned, I've worked for ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, since the mid-90s, and Neil really helped us think through how to work with local governments on greenhouse gases in general. So this was a really good partnership. And if we could go to the next slide, and then I'll quickly hand it over to you guys. This definitely has been a partnership. In addition to Neil and Amy and the Building Decarbonization Coalition, the Air District has worked with the Bay Area Regional Collaborative, as well as an advisory group of about a dozen local government staff and building energy experts to identify the right content for this website and to make the Compass an easy to navigate and useful tool. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Amy and Neil.
Thank you so much, Abby. Really appreciate that. And we'll give you an opportunity to see those, both email address and the URL here again. But before you get distracted by that, let's give you an overview of the Compass itself, and then we'll give you an opportunity to chime in. This is intended to be an interactive conversation. So one of the questions we'll be starting with here is really what's been bothering you in your local government around the next step for building decarbonization. So keep that in the back of your head for now, and then we'll walk you through the Compass. So this is the homepage of the Clean Building Compass. And as Abby so eloquently summarized, this is really meant to be a clearinghouse, and it's organized in a variety of different ways. So we have a lot of content in here. It's a library of sorts, but you can find things in through multiple avenues. And so I'm just going to walk you through the structure and then we'll go through a couple of example searches and then allow you to chime in and what you might want to see while we're here. So you'll see right up top, we start with the search function. If you know what you're looking for, feel free to type it into the search box and go straight to it. But if you're less than sure, we also have a couple of different options. This top bar in the orange here, we have by role, by desired result, and by construction type. And hopefully that's fairly self-evident, but really it's a matter of if you know who you are, but not sure what you're looking for, you can go by role. If you know what you want to achieve and not sure how to get there, you can go by desired results. And then by construction type will be for existing buildings or for retrofits or for new construction. And we'll dive into those momentarily once we show you this homepage. Then you can also scroll down and look at kind of the broad categories of the library collections, if you will, that we've assembled here for you. And they do run the gamut across a variety of different issues, as you see them scrolling here. Most of the items really focus on the implementation rather than the planning side of the equation. So less about climate action planning, although we do have some of that content, and really about how to get there. So each of these elements you can dive in and look at library items as well, content there. You can also then scroll down further, thank you, Neil, to some of the more popular items. So this will be regenerated over time. This is a dynamic site. We are adding content. I think the most recent content was added yesterday. And so the most popular items come to the top here, and this will get updated as well. So you can see what your peers in other cities are searching for and what's gaining traction on the site as well. And then all the way at the bottom, we have our moment of gratitude for our partners, but then also an opportunity for suggestions. So as we go through this, if you see something that is missing, something that you wish was here, or something you can't find, or really an opportunity to show off for yourself work that you're working on, you can go and submit suggestions or send us an email directly at compass@buildingdecarb.org. So there are a couple of different opportunities to find out more and to search more. But hopefully we've assembled enough to get you started. And so if you'll scroll back up to the top, thank you, Neil. So I am wondering if anybody on the phone has a particular problem that they've been challenged with recently that they might want to look for a solution within the Clean Building Compass. Feel free to use the chat function on the bottom there to respond. And we'll be doing this repeatedly. So more than one is an absolutely fine place to start. Something that has been, I don't know, Neil, do you have something in particular that you've been noodling on that you want to search for first?
Yeah, maybe how to implement REACH codes. If someone's passed a REACH code, what resources are there out there to help applicants and planning departments administer them?
Great.
Maybe a checklist.
Great. And so we could look through planning departments, or we could look for checklists. Let's take a look. Okay.
So go ahead.
No, please.
So here we have a couple of different checklists. We have a REACH code application checklist for non-residential buildings, checklist for multifamily buildings, and requirements and checklists for applicants in general. Maybe we'll take a look at the multifamily building checklist. This was developed, a collaborative effort by a number of parties, and the checklist includes this item. Actually includes two items that are available for users. One is the checklist itself, and this will appear on a new screen if I click it, as well as some supplemental materials that are basically a broad summary of the requirements of a REACH code. And this particular document was prepared to cover a variety of different REACH codes that cities could adopt. It tried to represent what was adopted out, what's been adopted, and they're fairly flexible and can be modified for different uses. So let's take a look at the application checklist for high-rise residential buildings. And if you click the item, it will open up. And this was developed, as I mentioned, a collaborative effort. The statewide codes and standards program was the lead entity on this. And this basically provides a template that cities can use. They can put their logo in here. It describes to the applicants what the requirements are and the steps for this process. And then it provides a sample checklist that, again, is in Word format, so cities can go in and adopt this specific to make it specific to their own reach code, their own local requirements. And then if we go back and look at the other item that's available in this category, it's basically a summary of requirements that talks about all the different reach codes or all the different markets for the reach codes. Occupancy types for low-rise residential, high-rise residential, and non-residential. And again, these can be customized as a handout to applicants.
Yeah.
That's one example of some materials that are here.
Thanks, Neil. And I just interject here. All of the items in the Compass are organized in the same way, where they have a photo to help you remember it, but then a short summary, and then a clickable link to download the items, as well as any supplementary materials that may be available. You can click on the download now button will only get you the first of the links, so the application checklist in this particular case, because that's the supplementary is a separate piece. But they're all organized in this way, and hopefully that will help you navigate so that you're not having to download a bunch of things to find what you're looking for. Not all of them are editable Word documents, however. So we have collected examples from actual staff reports, for example. There are research studies that are built in here. So there's a variety of different types of items. But rather than dive through that, let's look at, there's been several requests, Neil. So I'm going to pick a couple here and we'll go find them and see what they look like. So the first question here comes from Jen Ann Simmons, who is asking about successful financial incentives for decarbonizing buildings. So I will point out, I'll let Neil navigate to the financing and incentives column, and we'll look there. But I will point out that this is for city staff, so there's not an active incentive program so much as what types of programs a city might actually have engaged in. So we're not looking from the consumer perspective within the Compass. All right. And so again, you've navigated through the financing and incentives page, and now we have a variety of options that have presented itself. Two pages worth, my goodness. So there's on-bill financing, and in this case, I think most of the examples here are not specific to decarbonizing because that's just fairly new, but they're good examples of what cities might do in order to decarbonize. And certainly the pay-as-you-save model for on-bill financing is one that has been touted a lot recently as a potential to get to existing buildings for electrification. So it's certainly a good model, and there's good examples here of the Windsor particular program. What you'll see as you go through the tool is we've been selective. You're not going to get every pay-as-you-save or on-bill financing across the state. We'll just have one or two potential examples of each item type, so that you aren't diving through to look at all the differences so much as here's an example and here's a slightly different example and why are they different. So that will be explained in the summary itself. Great, thank you. We have lots of other requests here, Neil. So if you want to show us one more, feel free.
Sure. This one, Berkeley, the city of Berkeley has a transfer tax rebate program that applies to seismic retrofits. And there's been an interest in expanding that to apply to energy upgrades. They haven't done it yet, but they've put together a work plan or scoped what it might look like. This may not be the right time for that because revenues might be a little bit short in cities, but this item contains two pieces. One is they're scoping for this new program, which would expand property. Again, property tax transfer rebate would be, if you sell a home, you're paying a tax on that sales price. Part of that tax could be rebated if they did improvements. And in this case, there are existing rebates that are available for seismic upgrades. The idea would be if you do a home energy upgrade, you can get a partial rebate of your property taxes. So this item includes two things: the scope and the existing ordinance for the seismic upgrade. So you would get, by tapping this, you would see what they're discussing, what Berkeley is discussing with its Energy Commission on how this might work.
Great, thanks, Neil. I'm going to move on to the next one because we have a lot of questions.
Sure, okay.
Daniel Brotman states that I'm a local official. So many more questions are coming in. It scrolled away. How do I get started on defining and selling building decarbonization policies to my colleagues and the public? Yeah, this is a great one, Daniel. I really appreciate that. There are a couple of different things here. I would say that probably where I would start is around either education or looking for something like talking points. Might be a good place to start. Those would be great opportunities. But then, of course, electrification as a subject matter is also one. So there are a couple of different avenues that we can go through. Go for it, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So here's some examples of consumer education opportunities, some fact sheets, as well as some product finders and so forth. And then there's certainly a variety of different approaches you might use. Where there will be forthcoming a central consumer-facing website that we can plug later, but that's not related to this particular initiative. But for now, it's a really good question and a very timely one of how do we get started. So the research that backs it up in terms of how to get to electrification, but I really think the talking points are probably the place to start for this particular question. And as one of our most popular items on this list. All right, yep, as you can see here, some main comments about what are people most concerned with: cost and health and resiliency. Certainly top of the list, but they're not the only ones. Climate action is certainly part of the equation as well. Thank you for that inquiry. Next on the list is from Ned Orrit. Hi, Ned. Whole house electrification retrofits, even when including PV solar when possible, rarely appear able to generate positive cash flow for participants as required by a pay-as-you-save tariff or on-bill implementation system. Where might the compass point us? Oh, okay, this one's getting really specific. So this question is really about financing again and how we get to cost savings with electrification retrofits. It's a really good question, Ned, and I'm not sure where I might start. What do you think, Neil? Any thoughts?
Well, since it's about existing buildings, I would start here, and by construction type, and we'll go to existing buildings, and we can see a few issues that have been addressed here. I don't think we have anything specifically on how to make whole home upgrades more cost effective. We do have some technical reports that will help with issues related to or design issues related to construction, to retrofits. For example, residential remodel cost effectiveness analysis. This document might help. This is prepared by Frontier Energy. And actually, this is a cost effectiveness study for low-rise residential remodels. Probably as close to what you want as might be available right now. And we'll take a look. So these cost effectiveness studies are prepared by the California State Energy Codes and Standards Program. And they look generically at all climate zones and look at different model buildings, existing model buildings in this case, and propose measures and analyze the cost effectiveness of those measures. So this might be the most current available research to address that question.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. And I would say that this is also an evolving problem. I think that one of the challenges that we will face is keeping up with how quickly decarbonization in buildings is really evolving. And hopefully we can crack this particular nut soon. But thank you for your question, Ned. All right, next question is from Van Rainey, who asks, does decarbonization only apply to building issues? Is transportation like EV charging also included? He actually has a series of questions here. I will address that one first, though. So this particular tool is definitely focused on buildings specifically. And we've had the question around electric vehicles and best practices there come up frequently, but at this time it is building specific in nature. So sorry about that. Had to draw the line somewhere, but certainly the focus is around buildings. The next part of the question from Van is, for large building construction, do decarb programs account for air circulation and air scrubbing? I'm not sure I understand how that question relates to policy, in particular when it comes to local governments, but I do think it's a fair question related to building code. I'm not sure we address it here in the Compass. Neil, any thoughts there?
Not specifically, but there may be sources that address this. So there's a couple of zero net energy guides, all electric construction guides that may address this. And this is in the new by construction type, new construction area. And we see one here for single family homes, multifamily and commercial buildings and campuses. If that issue is addressed on this website, it would probably be in one of these three guides. So
Great.
That's my suggestion.
Thank you. And then another question here also from Van is, can utility taxes be considered by some cities be channeled into energy incentives? Yeah, so this is definitely, I don't know about utility taxes in particular, whether they generally go to a general fund rather than being earmarked for the purposes of energy incentives, but that doesn't mean they can't be. But there are also other mechanisms, and I'm sure Neil is navigating to them now, of ways to really target that, whether it's an in lieu fee for carbon mitigation fees of that nature. There should be some examples of that where they can go directly to incentivizing decarbonization upgrades.
So one of the best examples of this, unfortunately, is not in California. It's a greenhouse gas tax that was enacted by the city of Boulder. And this one I got access through the financing page. And if you look at this item, you will get three things: the text of their actual tax, a little history of the development process, and the staff report and ordinance for the latest amendment to that. So this gives you a kind of a complete picture of how Boulder did it. It'd be great to see if some California cities have done that. I know several cities have explored this. But again, there are California laws that deal with taxation are different than Colorado's laws. So it's a little more challenging here. But I did want to point out structurally in this one, in many cases where we do have a policy, like the text of an ordinance, we will try to include within that policy also the staff report that went along with it. doesn't always happen, but where we can get those, we do try and include them.
Great, thank you. And then the last question here from Van Rainey is about microgrids and what content do we have in the Compass that relates to microgrids?
So I would suggest we go to this technologies page and take a look. So we have a lot about all electric. We have the resilient home, storage and aggregation. We have the studies we saw before. We have a battery storage guide from New York State, from NYSERDA. We have a analysis right here. That may not be the best one. Let me see what's on page 2. I know we are just about to post the Fremont example that hasn't gone online yet.
It's there.
It's there. Oh, let's take a look. Maybe it's at the end here.
It's
Oh,
right
here
there.
it is. There it is. Amy got that up this morning or yesterday, I'm not sure. So this is a slide deck from Fremont summarizing their microgrid project at the fire stations. There are also a few other items in here. Let me see.
Neil, when you're done scrolling through, would you mind putting it into the search box at the bottom here and we can search for
Sure.
microgrids directly?
I got it spelled right. Microgrids. So we've got the Oakland Eco Block. Fremont example. Valencia Gardens, which is a low-income affordable housing project.
Yeah, so definitely some examples of microgrids here. And I wanted to show the search functionality here as well, as because you can go and sort. I will note though that the sort on the left here through the filter is an additive filter. So the first one will narrow it down, but then it will start to add things. So simply because of the sheer amount of content we have here, we want to make sure you can find what you're looking for. So this is just an example of how the search function works. All right. Terrific. Thank you for that. That's the end of our list of questions for right now. If you have others, please feel free to add them again in the chat. Appreciate all of that great content and conversation, because as you can see, it can quickly go from what's in the Compass to how do we use it. So certainly that's a part of the fun of our work. Neil and I get to think through a lot of those problems as we're developing and curating the content for you. So looks like we have some room for improvement when it comes to actual examples of financing programs for decarbonization, but that is forthcoming, guaranteed. All right. So any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to go ahead and move on, I think, to just give you some examples of by desired results and how you might use these functions here. So again, you might be looking for something that's specific to health or climate mitigation or affordability. You can go in through this window. Again, this is building only at this point in time. We're going to be working to add other elements to this, including more information on refrigerants and, I'm told, electric vehicles at some point, but we can go in and look at the opportunities for building specific items here.
We'll open up the equity page here. Another good example comes from Boulder, where they have a rental housing performance code. So they require rental buildings, rental housing units, to achieve a certain level of energy performance on a regular basis. Also, in this particular area of equity, we have links to the Grid Alternatives Low-Income Solar Program and a few reports that address the issue of equity and energy.
Great. And it looks like actually in the question and answer function, we have a couple of questions too, which we'll just answer for everyone. But before we moved on to that, the specific question is, does equity section include social justice concerns?
To the extent that it's addressed in any of these reports, yes, but not specifically. So equitable building electrification would be a good example of a report that addresses this. Again, there's the materials that we have here are all secondary. We're not producing any new materials. We're drawing on existing resources. So this was prepared by the Greenlining Institute. And it's probably a pretty good source to address that issue.
Great. And then here's a couple of questions from Richard Watson. The first of which is, for cities in California, given involving policy at the state level, where do you recommend cities focus their efforts to work toward building decarbonization? Well, Richard, I'm going to give you my very biased answer. And if you know anything about me, this is a clear one. Building electrification is a really good example of where we can get at new construction ordinances at a local level. That's certainly something that is a very active pursuit right now with local governments. It's not the only option, but it's a really good place to start. And I would highly recommend it if you haven't already. And then the second question here is, do you have any info gathering policies, such as the EBEWE in LA or the energy audit reporting rule at time of sale that cities such as Portland, Oregon have done? So this is really, I would classify this as benchmarking or other kinds of policies, but or auditing. There's a couple of different classifications I might put it under, but certainly there are examples here. I don't think we have the Portland one, though.
No,
so
we don't. That would be a good one to add.
Yeah, but there's certainly benchmarking policies are not uncommon across the country even, and there should be some examples here.
There's also some examples of code compliance disclosure upon sale. So it's not only benchmarking the energy use, not necessarily benchmarking the energy use, but saying that the permits the measures that have been installed in this home, if they replaced a furnace or a water heater, they've gotten a permit for that. And this was done first by Davis, but a lot of Marin County cities do this as well. And there's examples of those ordinances and the staff reports that accompany them. And there is quite a bit on benchmarking in here as well. Links to benchmark the Institute for IMT's reports on benchmarking and maps of cities that have adopted that, the state's benchmarking portal, as well as a number of other examples of particular benchmarking ordinances, such as San Francisco's and San Jose's.
So as we mentioned, this is intended to be dynamic and continuing to grow and evolve as the industry does. We've heard some great suggestions so far about electric vehicles and kind of the future of additional content, as well as the need for some really good financing programs to get at decarbonization in existing buildings in an equitable way, all of which are very true. And I hope to be able to add good content and case studies very soon as they become available. I'm wondering if anyone has an observation of something we may have missed, or something you'd like to see added to the Compass. And then a question popped up here that asks, do you also have state level legislation examples to consider? Neil, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we haven't really addressed state initiative, state policy. We've got a few connections, links to state sites regarding, climate action planning, the Governor's Office of Policy and Research, and CEQA. But this site is really designed for local initiatives, not state initiatives. One of the best resources for state initiatives is Desire, DSIRE. It covers a whole range of stuff, and it's organized by state or by topic.
Great. Well, is there anything else we should show off while we're here? We've covered a lot of ground so far.
Amy, I would like to go to one place to kind of address one of the questions earlier. Where does someone start? And by role is actually an interesting category, because you can look at elected officials or city administrators and so forth. Elected officials contain some very high level stuff. And while we don't expect necessarily elected officials to go here, this is a good place for staff to go to get materials that they can give to elected officials if they've got questions. So let's take a look, and there's a few high-level documents that are fairly useful here. One is this roadmap to decarbonization, which was produced by the Building Decarbonization Coalition. It's a great report, and it provides a fairly comprehensive but high-level overview of the process, the choices that people can, the choices that cities can make. The other document that's very summary and high level is the Shute, Mahali, and Weinberger memo and matrix about decarbonization options. The entire memo is here, and then the matrix of the options is presented here. So you can get a quick view of what are the different options and what authorities do local governments have. A nice place to start to get a kind of a broad overview on this before digging down into the details.
Great. I was going to mention the memo too, so we're on the same page. That's great. Yeah, certainly we're try to give you as many resources as possible, but knowing where to start is an important question. Another question popping up here in the chat is, are you familiar with the Climate Safe California Rapid Decarbonization Campaign and how Compass aligns with those efforts?
No, that's a good question. Climate Safe California?
Climate Safe California Rapid Decarbonization Campaign. I'm not familiar with it.
Thank you for the input.
Indeed. Great. Well, if there's no other questions, Neil, we can turn it back over to Abby to take us out. Thank you so much for your attention. And Abby, whenever you're ready, we'll let you.
Great. Thank you. That was great. And I love to see all those questions and comments. I've been making a list of all the additional things people want to see in this Compass. I wanted to just reiterate that you can, of course, take down the email address here, Amy and Neil. That's the way you can reach Amy and Neil. And any questions you didn't get answered here or that you think of later, please send to them, or thoughts on improving the tool, send to them. But I also want to encourage you to invite Neil and Amy to make this presentation to any other organizations that you might be, that you might participate in, organizations or associations or groups of local government staff, or even just to your own local government. We really want to, this is the time when we're rolling this out, and we really want as many folks to see it and use it as possible. So please feel free to invite them to present. And let's see, was that everything I just wanted to thank the SEEC Forum so much for inviting us to present and for having us here this morning. Thank you so much.
And thank you all for that amazing presentation. We really appreciate the resources you're developing for cities throughout the state. I'm going to share my screen real quick because I see individuals had questions about the webinar. So all of our webinars will be posted on the SEEC YouTube page and also our website. You can see the address of the website in the top left corner. We'll also be posting, well, there's only a couple, but we'll also be posting the PowerPoint slides there. And also we'll have a link directly to the Compass website. And again, we encourage you all to sign up for upcoming webinars and networking activities. Right now, I'm going to send a link in the chat box. It is a post-webinar survey. If possible, we would love to get your input as to how helpful this webinar was for you all. It's really important for us to get feedback because we want to make sure we're providing resources that are actually helpful for cities doing this kind of work. And again, we just want to give a quick shout out and thanks to the sponsors of the SEEC Forum. Without their support, this wouldn't be possible. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to email us or just again, check out the SEEC Forum website. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar and we hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.